What's up guys, it's me, and we just had the campfire live stream a couple of hours ago, and of course after that they talked about a lot of the stuff for the new season, but most importantly we got the patch notes now. So as always we're gonna be covering general stuff, and then when it comes to classes we're gonna be talking about Barbarian and Paladin because those are the things I play, and I think everyone that's following me on this channel is most interested in those two, right? So when it comes to the season, it's going to be Season of Death Awakening. We're going to have all of these cool portals here. Basically, these portals can spawn mostly on Hell Tides, and you kill the enemies that are around there, and it spawns like a big circle. And basically, this is a rush against the clock, kind of. The more you kill, the longer you can keep the circle open, the more enemies you spawn, and supposedly the better rewards you get, right? Other than that, whenever you can get the normal fissures, or you can get a fissure like this. Now, a fissure like this, if you complete it properly, if you don't let it like run out too early, you'll be able to spawn this guy, the Realm Walker. Now, the Realm Walker is much better than it was in Season 8, I want to say. Well, wait, was it Season 6? I can't remember. Well, the last one, you had to wait like a minute plus to kill him. This one, it will pop up and you can kill him right away if you have the damage. If you don't have the damage, well, you might still take 1 minute if your damage is really bad. But if you got the damage, you can kill him as fast as your damage allows, basically. Now, other than that, there's another type of fissure that I think only appears on a single spot. Like the spot where you had the... on Season 11 where you had the bosses, right? It's this boss here. Now, this boss, what's the name? Zarbinzet? No. Wait, what? What's the name of the boss? Did they not say the name of the boss? Whatever. This new boss here is very cool. Supposedly, according to them, it drops the new Mythics, which we're gonna cover in a second. It drops the new Mythics. But that's honestly not the most important thing. You can drop the Mythics elsewhere, but I believe it has a higher chance of dropping the Mythics. But the most important thing I would say is that this boss is, and they don't mention it here, but I found it on the PTR, this boss is really great for farming general uniques. Farming general uniques was a big point of pain last season, or this season, right, Season 13, because there's just no way for you to target farm them. You either do it on the cube, or you're just out of luck. Now, you can actually use this boss to farm them. It's not going to be as good as the other bosses when it comes to farming their uniques, because there's a much bigger pool on this one, but it's way better than what we had before at the very least, right? Now, when it comes to the Mythics, so right now, there's two different types of Mythics. There's the OG Mythics, aka Grandfather, all of that, right, which can only drop as Mythic, and you can no longer target craft them. You can only get them either by dropping them or by randomly crafting them on the, what's the name? The blacksmith, right? When it comes to the other Mythics, the other uniques, all other uniques can become Mythics and have their power increased by 30%. Now, this basically means if you have a T-Bolt, 20% by default, it becomes a 26% now. On that note, all the stats on that T-Bolt will be maxed out. So let's say you have Life Roll, and Life Roll goes from 1200 to 1450, I believe. It will always be on the 1450. It does not guarantee it's a GA, but if it's not a GA, it will always be on the max roll, which is very awesome. Even tempers, for example, if you put a temper on it, if it's not GA, it will be the max roll. Everything you can put on that item, it will be max roll. You can even roll one of the stats on the item on the enchanter now, on uniques, and I believe mythics as well. You can roll one of the stats to something else on the enchanter, and it's always going to be max roll. We're going to talk a bit more about that because there's a lot of confusion right now about what they are doing, because on the PTR it was doing one thing, now supposedly they're going another way because there's a lot of backlash-ish. We're going to talk about that in a second once you go to the patch notes, but other than that, let's actually keep going. We're going to have the tower here. As all of you guys probably know, I'm not really a fan of the tower, how it was implemented. I would much rather they did something like the challenge rift that we had on D3 and actually expanded onto it, instead of having like stuck skills and let's say a Paragon board. You could just use any skill you wanted, any Paragon you wanted, but like for example, the items were always locked in. You only had like 3 different types of gloves, 3 different types of chest piece, and it would rotate every week or every 2 weeks. And then you have to actually make a build out of that, right? That would deal with FOMO, like people just running the best build, because people don't know what the best build is, right? They have to figure that out. And depending on what you have, certain skills will not be as good as others and whatnot. And of course, you don't have to deal with any other thing. It's also not something that you have to invest a lot of time beforehand. I think for something that they want to be competitive, that would be much better. It would not be affected by any sort of RMT, anything like that. That being said, that's not what they're going for, and now you have the leaderboards. The thing, the silver lining with leaderboards is that we have solo self-fund. Solo self-fund would generally deal with people just trading up to have insane levels of gear, or most likely RMTing, right? It will not deal with exploits, but hopefully we can just create a shaming culture, right? And just whenever you see people exploiting, like hard exploits, we just, do a bit of a good old shaming to get them in line. But jokes aside, we'll see. Anyway, like we were talking about, solo self-found. Now we're gonna cover the cube stuff in a bit. Don't you worry. Solo self-found. So self-found is in the game now. It's basically just playing solo. You can't party with anyone, and you can trade with anyone. That's about it. You can still see people on the overworld. Like whenever you go to a world boss, people will still be there. You just cannot party with them at all. Now, unlike other games like Last Epoch, you don't really get a benefit from going solo self-found, and that to a degree makes sense, because let's be honest, trading is not really a thing in D4, although you kind of feel pressured to trade if you're trying to do leaderboard, or to push for the leaderboards or push for pit. You kind of feel forced to trade to actually get good gear. Trading is not really that supported in D4, let's be completely honest, right? The trade is there, but the trading was not made with an economy in mind. It was made with trading with your friends in mind, right? So there's not really an actual proper economy in D4, and trading is just a really bad experience, generally speaking. I love trading in PoE. I hate trading in D4 because it's just not actually supported by the game, realistically. But, Solo Self-Found does fix that to a degree, so we'll see. I'll be playing it this season. It does suck that I cannot play with you guys whenever you pop in on stream. If I'm doing Infernal Horde, sometimes people join in. That will no longer be possible. Sometimes I level with some of the viewers. She Devil, for example, I've been playing with her every single season for like the last 4 seasons when we start leveling. Sometimes other people join in as well. That's no longer gonna be possible, but it is what it is. We're gonna try it this season and we'll see. Now, when it comes to quality of life stuff, WarPlans. So Party Sync is in. You'll be able to party sync your WarPlan. You'll need to create a new one. Basically, join a party whenever all of you guys are there. You just do new plan for party, and you'll just create a new WarPlan for you guys, and then you just select everything and you go. When it comes to account, okay, not account wide, but like seasonal wide, for example, the same way Paragon works, right? If you create a character on the same season, you get the same level of Paragon points. That is not yet in the game. They have said both on this live stream and on the campfire chat we had a couple of weeks ago, on the Sanctuary sit down, sorry, we had a couple of weeks ago, they did say they are looking into it, but it's not something that's going to be coming in for season 14, and they haven't confirmed when it's coming in. They just confirmed they are looking into it, so we will see how that goes. Now, another thing of note that I really want to point out here, Obol. Obol was increased from 2,500 to 10 times more. This felt really great on the PTR. You could actually run escalation dungeon of Obols on the 3rd dungeon, and you didn't have, maybe you had to go to town once if you already had a lot of Obols going in, but if you only had like 5,000 or something, you'd be able to clear the full dungeon, and then at the end, once you got everything, you'd then go to town and spend your Obols. The gold cap, this is mostly for trading. If you traded a lot, the gold cap was really a pain in the ass. If you didn't trade at all, the 99 billion was already more than good enough for you, so not really influential at all. The minimap icons were very nice. There were some bugs on the PTR, but it was still very nice. because a lot of times the chests blend in a lot on dungeons and stuff like that, right? So this was very nice. And boss trophies, I think this was an oversight, and it's now, we also have boss trophies for Astaroth and Bartuk, although I didn't really use them much outside of like the first day or two to actually get the uniques I wanted, right? To get one more shot at uniques. Other than that, Warlock is going to be free on the first week. That being said, I don't think you should be playing Diablo 4 without the expansion right now. Last expansion, it was not that bad, you're just missing runes and the class. This expansion, you're missing the class, or the classes, and you're missing the cube, you're missing the set, and you're missing one of the specializations on your class. Honestly, this, I don't think you should be playing Diablo without the season, so I do recommend buying the season, I think it's worth the price, but if it's not for you, maybe hold on for a discount or something, because it's definitely not a good experience, I want to say, without the expansion. Other than that, I know you guys might not care too much about this, but I really love Overwatch. I've been an Overwatch fan for a while, so I'm really excited for this. So real quick, going over this, Reinhardt is going to be us Barbarians, Brigitte here is going to be the Paladin, Road Dog is going to be the Druids, Kiriko here is going to be the Spiritborn, and this last tree, again, she's going to be Rogue. This last tree is a bit more hard to say. I'm gonna guess that considering Reaper is more of an edgy kind of guy, this is the Warlock. Considering Mora is a bit more of an morally ambiguous character, this is likely going to be the Warlock. And then the Mercy is gonna go up to the Sorks. Now, on other Diablo 4 stuff, we got the season, we got the pet, right? You got all that stuff. I'm gonna link this thing down below so you can check it out. The season blessings, there's nothing special here to talk about. We're gonna have this drop here on the Twitch. I'm gonna be live whenever the season comes out. So if you guys want to get the drop, join in for 2 hours and you're gonna get this drop. It's a decently cool nice if you're playing Barb for some builds like more like more metal builds. Damn, that was a word that was not coming to my head. Anyway, for my metal builds, this is definitely gonna be awesome. But yeah, other than that, not a lot to talk about here, so let's actually jump into patch notes. Now, when it comes to the patch notes here, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this, they are currently a mess. Because they just kinda glued together the updates to the patch notes and the patch notes from PTR, so there's some contradictory things in the patch notes, and there's some other stuff. For example here, by the way, sorry about the noise in the background, we're currently celebrating São João here in Portugal, and certain parts of Portugal at the very least, and you can hear a lot of fireworks in the background. I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna celebrate as well, but we're gonna record the video before that. So, first of all, this is just talking about the ruptures. This is, you'll not know this because if you didn't play the PTR, it doesn't matter. So, when it comes to unique items, right, you can now roll, like I talked about earlier, you can now roll one of the affixes on the enchanting. As affixes will always be max roll, no matter what affix you add, it's always going to be max roll. And as you can see here, chaotic and focused reroll transfigurations have been removed for unique and mythic uniques. Now, they said this on the live stream. They also said the opposite on the live stream. And if we do focus the reroll here, you can see there's also this line here on the patch notes. When using these recipes, uniques can have their affix modified by chaotic and focused reroll cube recipes. So, sorry, that's contradictory to what we have above, right? I'm gonna assume that this was what was for the PTR. As I said, they kind of glued the PTR patch notes and the new patch notes together, and it just has a bunch of contradictory stuff. I'm gonna assume the one up top is the correct one, right? This thing is still applies. You no longer have to hope to get the max roll on your talismans, as long as the talisman has a good stat. You just keep rolling the power until you get a decent power on it, right? And all resists are finally on the chromatic tuning prism, finally. Other than that, let's go back up here, right? not an item for the same gear slot as we talked about. It's the same gear slot here. So if you want to target a Rama, it could become a Rama, it could become a third blade, it could become a Shard Varathil, it could even become a mace, I think. So like a Butcher's Cleaver or something. So yeah, and Mythic Uniques cannot be used here. Now, other than that, the other change here, which this change, by the way, I was someone, I'm gonna just quickly, I was someone that really liked us being able to roll the stats on the items. Two reasons for that. I know it was not a popular opinion, but do hear me out a bit. This might be a hot take, but do hear me out. I think they should have stuck with it for this season, because I think a lot of people just had an immediate reaction to it, because that's not a unique, right? And they had that reaction to it, which I do understand. If, I'm going to preface this, if uniques were done well before, I would rather it had always the same stats. The thing is, uniques were not done well before. There's multiple uniques before that they had good effects, but they just had awful stats, so you never used them. For example, think about Locran's Talisman. Locran's Talisman gave you 40% crit chance, and on average, depending on the resource you had, but if you're using Locran's, you're stacking resource, right? You had like an 80 to 100% multiplier for crit damage. That's very decent, right? On top of the crit chance, that's an insane amulet for the amulet slot. But the big issue was that it had awful stats. It had like 2 or 3% all stats. It had resource, which was decent, considering you are stacking resource, right? And then it had crit damage, which was additive, which at the time was really awful. And it had all resist, which was really awful. Compare that to a legendary amulet at the time with the main stat, 15% main stat, if not 30% at sometimes, right? A bunch of passives, and it was not even close. A lot of uniques had that problem. Contrary, there are some uniques that are well done. For example, Ugly Bastard. Ugly Bastard had specific things to it that nothing else had. For example, Wrath of the Berserker cooldown, it was a really clutch stat sometimes. You also had, for example, what was the name of that? The passive that increased, reduced the damage you took while you were berserking, right? That was the only place you could get that passive. It was really strong. You also had a big fire damage on Lucky Hit, which actually made the build possible in Season 10 for Whirlwind, right? Was it Season 10? I think it was Season 10, right? There were a bunch of good stuff, but that was more the exception than the rule. A lot of the uniques were just bad because of their stats. So that's why I was really excited for this, because right now, as long as the power is good, you can always, if you know what, I think a lot of, the other thing was that a lot of people were not comfortable with the cube, because to actually get the unique with the stats you wanted, you had to go back. For example, let's say you're making a weapon. The way to make a weapon with all the stats you wanted was to remove all the offensive stats except one, roll it to be something you really wanted with a good roll as well, and then you started adding all the other offensives back. That's how you did it. It was not really, something that you would expect to do. You had to basically make the item worse before you could make it better. But if people actually figured that out, or so I actually had a video prepared to go out for that, or actually enlightened on how to do it, I think people would be much more amenable to actually do it. Because I think what they're doing now here, it's the worst of both worlds. So now, as you can see, all unique items have 2 guaranteed affixes when dropped. And as you can see, generally speaking, they are not anything unique at all. They're just random stats: weapon damage, lucky hit resource, primary core stat, poison resist, weapon damage, max life, primary core stat, critical multi, attack speed, core stat, right? There's 1 or 2 exceptions here, but generally they are just not the best stats, right? And they're just there. And you can no longer reroll, but you still have 2 random stats on them, which was kind of one of the big issues people had with uniques before. It was that they were random, and most of them were just randomly bad. right? You have to get an insane amount of uniques to actually get them. Being able to roll the stats, by the way, this was not free. You had to use one of those really rare, unique things to roll, and to actually roll a really good one, you had to invest into it, but considering that we're getting the mythic ones, you just just upgrade the one you have. Like, let's say you drop a Gores with, I don't know, strength, max life, crit chance, and then armor, right? Okay, that's not the worst thing ever, right? It has crit chance and it has strength. I don't like the life because I'm playing a Selig build. Let me just roll that life into crit damage. Okay, now it's a very decent Gores, right? It's not the best, but it's a very decent pair. And whenever you would get the mythic Gores, now you'd go full in, right? You'd make the best Gores you could. Granted, it would be hard to deal with GAs, but at the very least you could have an incredibly solid pair, right? Now with this, it's gonna have two suboptimal stats. For example, if you go look at the Gores here, I always don't know how to spell this. It's gonna have two suboptimal stats like crit chance, attack speed, crit multi, wound multi, fizz multi, all damage multi are better than both strength and skill ranks, right? Unless the skill ranks are just like 8 of them or something, like it was on the old Gores. But like, it's just gonna make it harder because you want to roll this strength away, but depending on the other two stats you get, imagine if you get a mythic, right? This is the worst part. Imagine you have a Gores, you already have a decent unique Gores. You have a Gores, okay, you drop the Gores with crit damage, wound damage, and then you just roll it, of course, drop to strength and skill ranks as well, and you roll the core stat to critical strike chance. That's a very good Gores, right? But now you drop the mythic one. It's a mythic I want to use, right? It's a mythic, it's really cool, the effect is better. But you drop the mythic that has primary core stats, skill ranks, armor, and life. What now? Right? You're just screwed. That mythic is never going to be better than the unique one you have. Right? And I think that's going to be a pain point to a lot of people. I think they tried to kind of meet people halfway. As I said earlier, I think they should have stuck to their guns and just do it this season. If it didn't work, you always have next season, because that's kind of how seasonal games work. You try something one season, if it doesn't work, you revert it next season or try to make it better. They tried to go halfway, and I think that was not the best choice. This is definitely going to create a lot of bad moments for people whenever they drop a mythic and it's actually trash because of the random stats, right? And I think they should either stuck to their guns, or if they're going to do this, they should have done all 4 stats are always the same. At the very least, whenever you drop a mythic, it's always going to be an upgrade, right? It will always be an upgrade because all the stats are the same, and then you can roll one of them if you really need like cooldown or something and the item does not have cooldown, right? I think one of those, either sticking to their guns or going all the way to the other side, would have been fine. Trying to meet things halfway like this, I don't like it. But again, when it comes to this, let me know what you think. I'm really interested to see what the community thinks about this one. Again, I think either side would have been fine, although I would prefer if they stuck to their guns and tried it out. But this is not the way, I don't think. Now, let's actually, if you want to see what the stats are for each unique that you have, I'm gonna have, again, this link down below. You can see the ones you want. But let's just jump in to the actual patch notes. We're gonna have to jump a bit around here, because you can see we have a bit of changes to Barbarian here, but they are not all the changes from the season, right? Because the PTR changes, for some reason, are separate. So, first of all, really important thing here, Paladin. We use this, like if you really wanted to push the top bits with Whirlwind, you're using this free stack with Paladin. This is no longer going to be a thing because it only applies to cold damage. We don't do cold damage, neither on Barbarian nor Paladin. So it's just dead on the water. That's not gonna work. We got a nerf here to Challenging Shout that I think it's a bit dumb, I'm gonna be honest, because a lot of Barbarian builds already kind of suffered a bit on single target, and this is just gonna make our single target worse, not making the Challenging Shout, because technically they cannot be taunted, but they still... This is a problem that a lot of freeze and stagger builds had on bosses. And now they're just hard coding it into Challenging Shout, even though it was working well. I don't think they should have done this, but whatever. This nerf to Berserk Crucible, I don't think it's warranted either. Like, Berserk Crucible was never the best set, even though it was the most used. It was the most used because it was incredibly flexible, right? You could run this on anything and it would work. And of course, if you're running a Selig build, you couldn't run the other stronger one because it had % life. Again, don't think this was warranted. This one, however, I think it was done in a... I don't think it's enough, but it is definitely in the right direction. So basically, the Bleed set was basically a Rupture set, right? You either play Rupture, or it didn't really do that well and you're just running Berserk Crucible or the other one. The Titan one, whatever, what was the name? Now they're actually reducing the impact of Rupture and actually increasing the bleed damage as a whole for bleed builds. I think, first of all, I think this should be damage over time, not just bleeding. But alas, I still think this should potentially be 300, but we'll see if this is enough or not, because we do have on that 2 set, you do have 80% duration of bleeds, which is another multiplier. So we'll see how good that actually is. Now, going to the rest of the Barb stuff. First of all, we're gonna have the sets here. Arms of Ariat got buffed. It's now 100%. Thanks to the uniques being nerfed as well, generally speaking. We might want to consider the Mythic Charm now and potentially run a 4 set with a 2 set here of Arms of Ariat. That being said, the 3 passive is not that good for builds that are not constantly weapon swapping, I believe. So there's that, but it's probably still going to be very nice with the 100% multiplier. Now, when it comes to the other changes for Barbarian, as you can see here, they did talk about nerfing Selig and nerfing the Endurant Fate, but I don't think they actually understood why those things were good together. First of all, Selig, from my experience on the PTR, I don't think it was nerfed at all. Selig itself and Endurant Fate was only nerfed from 40% damage reduction to 20% damage reduction. But the damage reduction was not what made Endurant Fate strong. What actually made Endurant Fate strong was the fact that you could not be one-shot. All the damage was taken as damage over time. Which means that on the builds that can regen a lot of resource, like we can on Selig builds, you're basically immortal because of that. Now, they kind of address that here. As you can see, you gain a lot less fury whenever you are hit. This is definitely a nerf to Selig. You will no longer feel immortal on Selig because you will not be regening as much resource. That being said, it's still probably the best defensive setup for us on Barbarian, going Selig. But, you know, it's no longer as strong, and I was honestly gonna recommend Selig as the baseline build because it was on par when it came to damage. Now that you could get all the stats you wanted on Selig, because one of the big issues of Selig was that stats. Now, since you can actually get a bunch of crit chance, crit damage, vulnerable damage, or you could on the PTR. Now it's not going to be as good, but its potential is still good enough. You could just justify using it. Much more, and Paladin is actually 0.65 as well, right? So it's actually much better. That being said, I will have to consider now versus the life. It's probably still gonna be Selig coming out on top, but alas, we'll see. When it comes to Frenzy got the buff, as you can see here. On top of that, as you can see down here, Battle Trance also got a big buff, not only on the attack speed and damage, but you now also get the Barrage variant for free, which is very interesting. Frenzy was already very good for leveling. It's probably one of our best, if not the best leveling we had. And now it was a decent endgame build, but it was not the best. Now it's going to be much better, so we'll see how that stacks up. Now, Call of the Ancients Highlander no longer works with aspect of Apologetic Fervor. That's understandable. That this almost felt like a bug. It was not, but it almost felt like a bug. The upgrade on Call of the Ancients was nerfed for builds that are not minions. If you're minions, this is still pretty good. If you're not minions, it was a small nerf. If you're playing with Highlander, it was a big nerf. Wrath Berserker, 30% damage increase during its duration. Now, this was pretty strong on the PTR. That being said, the trade-off now getting with the stats being on uniques being guaranteed to stats, the trade-off to get cooldown on the Salig, on Starless and stuff like that, it's gonna be slightly bigger, and it's gonna be harder to get potentially, but it might still be worth it. Because not only it's the damage you get, but if you get cooldown, you also get better uptime on Warcry and Challenging Shout, both defensive and offensive part. And not only that, Unstoppable. Since we're not as tanky as we were last season, being able to be unstoppable, especially if you're pushing tower or pit, it's definitely a big plus to have 100% unstoppable uptime. So I'll definitely be trying to make it around Wrath of Berserker for the next season. Other than that, Steel Grasp got fixed. Apparently, it was not being treated as martial. Or it was being treated as martial even though it was combat. Whatever, right? It got fixed. Limitless Rage. It's gutted, okay? Limitless Rage is no longer a thing. Because if this was, you stack it up, and then as long as you generate Fury in the last 4 seconds, you keep the effect, that would be okay. But you keep losing it every 4 seconds. So like best case scenario, this is going to be like a 40-45% multiplier. And that's like the best case scenario. So I don't think anyone is going to be running this outside of maybe basic skills. Basic skills can potentially really, get this up insanely fast to justify it. Other than that, I don't think any other build is going to be using this. As we talked about, Uniques, Battle Trance got the big buff, Shin Gorgermel got the buff, although I don't think much builds were actually using it for the damage. And on our glyphs, Ire got buffed, and as you can see, Dominate got the massive nerf, justified, honestly. And as you can see up here as well, I kind of skipped this a bit. But on the general stuff here, Banished Lords got the massive nerf. I don't think this was warranted, okay? This was definitely not warranted. Banished Lord was not the problem. The problem was that definitely the Dominate Glyph and Tidal to a lesser degree. Tidal got the nerf, but it was a good change as well, because it was made a utility aspect now. I think that fits it much better. But if you actually look at this, we get 4 overpower stacks by default, and then plus 3 from Tidal. So at best case scenario, Banished Lord is giving a 70% multiplier. That's not good enough, right? You can just get a legendary aspect that gives you a 90% multi on top of having much better stats. So there's that. As we talked about, Ender Fate got nerfed. Grandfather here, you might see it got nerfed here. Yes, the damage got nerfed, but Grandfather now always drops with 17. It's up there on the unique stats, right? It always drops with 17% crit chance, at the very least on the PTR. Without GA, without Masterwork. With GA and Masterwork, it goes up to 34% crit chance on the Grandfather. Grandfather is going to be a must-have on every build that scales crit chance. So if it's not a damage over time build, you're gonna definitely be running Grandfather. Other than that, Shattered Bow got a big buff, not only to the percentage here, but now one of the issues with Shattered Bow was that it kind of had really bad stats. Now it's gonna have weapon damage as well, which you might be able to roll off, but the other two stats can be really good stuff, like the percent damage over time and or physical damage and or strength. So it's definitely going to be much better. Other than that, Elder Queen Crest, damage reduction removed, it's now at more alt skills. That's probably decent actually. Our prediction was gutted. I don't think you're ever running this whenever you also have Tuskhelm on Barb. Tuskhelm was not touched, it's still a 55% multi. It's very good. Tyrell's Might, gutted. Any legendary piece of equipment can have a better damage mitigation aspect. So it is what it is. Shroud of Frost Dead is still dead in the water. Crown of Evolution is potentially a good decent one. I think it goes up to 45%. So that's potentially good for some builds. Mostly for Paladin, not really for Barb. When it comes to aspects here, as you can see, Hellbent we don't really care. Cremator we also don't really care too much. It was actually a nerf anyway. Duelist got changed. Duelist is now a good multiplier. That being said, it's a 65% multiplier. Dual wield is still very bad. So you're never gonna use this, I don't think, unless you're forced to use dual wield like double swing, but you know, it is what it is. And one thing here, aspect of Lynn's Anvil was also nerfed. It's now capped at 14. I believe you need 30 resolve stacks to get to 14, but for Barbs it's definitely not worth it. For Paladin, it's still kind of worth it on some builds if you're playing with Fortress. Now let's actually jump here to the... where's the bug fixes? There we go. Barbarian here, we got a bunch of bug fixes here, down here. Damage reduction on this thing, on Challenge Shout was apparently not scaling its skill rank, now it should. The Winding variant of Whirlwind still works without non-attack skills, so it still works with shouts. On the PTR it still works with shouts, even though here it says otherwise, right? We got a couple of... you can go through this as well. I'm gonna go over a couple of more important ones. Rasta Berserk, I don't know what they mean by this. This was already giving a duration on the live. It was giving the same duration on the PTR, so I'm not 100% sure what it means. We also have a couple of fixes to the third blade, which was broken on the live version. It's now working properly on the PTR. I don't know how good those builds are gonna be. That being said, Mighty Throw definitely has a build. Bit Dropper has been cooking on it. It's gonna be a build for sure, so look out for that one. Other than that, not a lot of big stuff here besides you can go again, you can go through this. Some stuff you might be wondering about, some stuff that I don't really care too much. Oh yeah, this one for Leap did not function. Okay, these changes are after the PTR. For some reason they put them all here. This was not working on the PTR. I submitted this bug report, so I remember for sure this was not working on the PTR. This was already fixed on the PTR, but it was not on the PTR patch notes, but it was definitely fixed on the PTR. I believe Crusher is also working, and this was fixed to work with Ancients, so Ancients are stronger. And then this bug also kind of nerfs Ancients, but Ancients are definitely gonna be the stronger pushing build, I'm fairly certain. For general play, Whirlwind is probably still gonna be the best though. But for pushing, Call of Ancient build is probably still gonna be the best. Now, let's actually talk about Paladin real quick as well. Okay, why... again, you can go through the uniques here. They don't... again, it is going to be what it's going to be. I mostly care about the other stuff. So Oaths got buffed. All the Oaths got the massive buffs. So Paladin got buffs overall, just on all the builds, basically. Wing Strikes, a small buff. I don't think this is going to be enough to make it really strong, but alas. We're going to be getting a bit tankier on Paladin. This was definitely something I felt on Paladin, that we're a bit squishy, even though we're a board and shield class. We're still feeling really squishy. This should help out a bit. This will help out a lot, although it will not help out against explosions and damage over time, because you cannot block those. That being said, still very nice. Edges, a bit of armor for the builds that actually run this. It's always nice. Seal of the Second Trumpet, a bit of a buff. I don't think this will be enough to actually make Judgment that good, but alas, it's something. Now, these were the changes that were already coming, that were already on the PTR. Zenith got a really decently sized bug. Clash got the buff, sorry. Clash got both a buff and a nerf. I think Clash is still going to be one of the best builds we have on Paladin. I could be wrong, but it's Zeal is probably gonna be a really contender for the top spot though, I wanna say. Other than that, Blessed Shield, Thorns got nerfed again. Shield Charge got a bunch of big buffs, like base damage doubled, cooldown reduced a bit. Now you get 2 attack speed, so you can make it even faster. And the base armor was also increased, so thank you. Evan's Fury, I don't think this was good enough, but I could be proven wrong. And again, contradictory stuff. This was the change we got on the PTR. This was the buff we got on the PTR, but the actual buff you're gonna see on the live on Season 14 is gonna be the one up top we talked about just seconds ago, which is gonna be 25%. The one thing here, Judicator's Oath, you no longer have to stack it, it's always gonna be 60%, which is nice. Other than that, Lex Rebuke got a sizable buff, a bunch of uniques also got it. White Dove, very nice, although I feel like the Blessed Shield needs a lot more, but alas. Red Sermon got a decently sized buff. Again, Zeal is probably going to be one of the top contenders, I want to say. Lance, potentially, but it's much harder to actually clear with Lance, so maybe not. Some brand buff, Supplication got a buff. That being said, the Brandish, I think, is still not going to be the best skill, but it will be better at the very least, right? Now, when it comes to set bonuses on Paladin, we got damage reduction on Katan's Iron Conviction, and we got slightly better reduction on Evan's Radiant Fire, right? Nothing too big to talk about. Now, bug-wise, Zealot Oath was, I believe, doing slightly less damage than it was intended, so that was definitely a buff. And the other one I want to talk about here, as you can see, there's a lot of things. Red Sermon Unique did not correctly apply Death or Glory. Now, this was actually applied properly, most of the time at the very least. On the Paladin, what's not actually applying properly, I don't know the node by name here. This node here, Call of the Wicked, was the thing that was not actually working, and as you can see there, there's no patch. No, it was not working on the PTR. I tested this out. It was not working on the PTR. Nothing changed. Another thing that was not working on the PTR was the Shield Bearer node here. It's basically, if you don't have full block by default, whenever you join an instance, it will snapshot. Let's say you have 65% block before you use something like Edges, right? To give you the other 35% you're missing. It will only consider the 65%. Even if you use Edges, even though the number here is going to go up, the damage you get is still going to be at 65%. So that definitely sucks. I tested it out on the PTR. It still had that bug. And as you can see here on the patch notes, I don't think where Aspect of Indomitable, we're only talking about this one here. We're not actually talking about the Paragon node here, right? The Shield Bearer. So that sucks. A potentially decently buff to Fanatism Aura because it was not working properly. That's nice. And other than that, as you can see, not a lot of stuff going on here. Some fixes here and there. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it. Let me know what you think about these patch notes. It's definitely, I want to especially know your opinion on the unique changes. Because Paladin got general buffs all across the board. I think we're gonna have a lot more. Paladin is definitely gonna be a bit better than it was before. We also have respectable on the Barb side. I think they left a lot of underperforming builds, underperforming skills without any love whatsoever. But generally speaking, Barb is still gonna be potentially slightly better than Paladin, especially on the pushing department. I think minions are gonna be pushing like 140, 145 maybe. Whirlwind is gonna be sitting around 130, 135, I think. Minions are definitely a bit ahead of the pack, I feel, especially if the fixes actually work. But yeah, let me know what you think, especially about the uniques or anything else we talked about here, the classes, the seasonal stuff. Let me know what you think. And yeah, hope to see you guys on the live stream whenever the season comes out. We're gonna be live for like at least 12 hours whenever the season comes out, over on Twitch and of course here on YouTube. And other than that, like I said, let me know what you think, especially about the uniques. I really want to know what you guys think about the uniques. I'm personally really disappointed with it. Personally, I believe they should have stuck to their guns, or at the very least, completely go the other way. Trying to go midway. I think it was really a bad choice, but let me know what you guys think. And as always, see you guys next time. In the next couple of days, we're gonna have build guides for, I'm gonna try to cover all the builds I have, to at least have a video guides for all the Paladin builds, and of course the Whirlwind build will always have a guide on this channel. As always, see you guys next time. Bye bye.